Hey y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Flick Connection. Today we're talking about all the best stuff that Prime Video is adding in February 2025. And it's a very long list. Now on the first is where they're adding all the stuff you're familiar with. Movies I've talked about I don't know how many times, so we're actually gonna blow through those pretty quickly. But throughout the month, they're adding some pretty interesting stuff here in February, including a romantic movie I'm actually looking forward to watching for Valentine's Day this year. A brand new David and Goliath series, Reacher returning for season 3, and a lot more. But on February 1st, they've already added Arctic, starring Mads Mikkelsen. In this movie, he plays a man stranded in the Arctic after a plane crash. And it's a fantastic wilderness survival story. He's pretty much alone for most of the movie, so it's a fairly quiet movie. I made the mistake of watching this movie on a flight once. Not a good movie to watch on a flight for obvious reasons, but on the comfort of your own couch, it's a great one. Breach is one I mentioned just last month. It's coming over to Prime. This is actually based on a true story of a Russian spy in the US government. Or rather, it's the true story of Robert Hansen, who went on trial for selling secrets to the Russians. He's played by Chris Cooper in the movie, and for like a modern day espionage movie, like a real life one, Breach is pretty incredible. Capote comes back to Prime, arguably one of Philip Seymour Hoffman's greatest roles. While it is a fantastic movie, it's not one of my favorite performances of his, but that's mainly just because the Truman Capote voice, it's not annoying necessarily, but there's just much more entertaining characters that Philip Seymour Hoffman has done, but Capote still is just one of those movies that just displays how excellent of an actor he was. Speaking of great actors, Dances with Wolves is getting added, one of the greatest westerns of all time, certainly one of Kevin Costner's greatest movies. He's tried to reclaim this magic multiple times. He almost did it with Open Range, but I think he fell pretty damn short of Dances with Wolves with Horizon. So if you were a little disappointed in that like I was, it's well worth revisiting Dances with Wolves. It's basically a masterpiece.
You're saying, what are you saying?
No,
I'll say Fargo is a masterpiece within its genre as well. You know, in terms of thrillers like that, they do not get much better. Not to mention the fact that Fargo is just laced with all that, typical Coen brothers humor as well, which means you get a solid, rock solid thriller and a pretty funny movie as well. It's a beautiful combination that you just don't see in a lot of other films. And while everyone's great in that movie, it's probably my favorite Steve Buscemi performance of all time.
Is there anything else you can tell me about him?
No. Like I say, he was funny looking. More than most people, even.
Now, another Steve Buscemi performance I really love is in Ghost World, but this is kind of a quirky little indie flick. It is a comedy, I think technically classified as a dark comedy, but it's not, overly dark. And it's basically just a coming-of-age story. You follow two girls right after high school. They're both kind of outsiders, and they end up connecting with this older man who's looking for romance. They try to help him out. Again, Steve Buscemi plays that guy. He's fantastic, and it really is just a coming-of-age story that's got a nice kind of late 90s edge to it. It came out in 2001, but it definitely feels like a product of Gen X. They're also adding one of the most underrated comedies of the 1980s with I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. Another one I've talked about recently. It's jumping over to Prime. It's an early Wayans Brothers movie, and it's really funny. If you like spoof comedies, movies like Airplane, The Naked Gun, and you've somehow never seen this, make it one of the first movies you watch off of this list, trust me. But for an even more classic comedy, we dial the clock way back to one of the best comedies of all time, one that has held up for decades. It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Not only is this a funny movie, but it's also just beautiful. It's super long, has incredible cinematography, everything's in Technicolor. It is a stunner of a movie from the very beginning. And if you've never seen it or even heard of it, they later remade this movie and titled it Rat Race. But you've got a bunch of strangers that find out about a hidden stash of money, and instead of agreeing to all split it, they end up racing one another to this supposed hidden treasure. And like I said, it's a long movie with a bunch of physical gags in it and all sorts of stuff. It really is a riot to watch today. I've watched it with my kids. They loved it. You do have to sit back and be a bit patient with this movie though. It's from the early 1960s. It's over 2 hours long. So it's got a slower pace to it. You wouldn't call it slow paced, but it's got kind of a drawn out pace to it. But in the case of this flick, it's not a bad thing. Lars and the Real Girl is a funny movie starring Ryan Gosling that has a ton of heart to it. In this movie, he plays a young man with some sort of mental deficiency. They're not exactly clear on what it is, at least not up front. And one day he starts bringing his new girlfriend around, and she is a sex doll. And he presents her as if she's this likable, affable, lovely young woman, and it's a really funny gag, but there's also a lot going on under the surface, and not only because Ryan Gosling's doing such a fantastic job playing this character, but the story actually does have quite a bit of depth to it, making it just a fantastic movie, again with a quirky kind of edge to it. Now, while that movie's pretty squeaky clean, my next one is just a sex-laden, depressing movie, but I still highly recommend Leaving Las Vegas. Now, this is the movie that Nicolas Cage won an Academy Award for Best Actor for, and when you watch the movie, you can tell why. Yes, he's overdoing it a bit, but in like the most perfect way possible in this movie. And then Elizabeth Shue, my goodness, the two of them, the chemistry that they like develop over the course of this movie is palpable. I mean, it's just a brilliantly directed movie about a man who's trying to drink himself to death in Las Vegas. So this one too deals with some very heavy subject matter. It will put you in the dumps a bit, but it's so effective at doing that. Again, it's a brilliant flick. Another one that's a bit of a downer of a flick that is still just so good today is Midnight Cowboy. This came out in the late 1960s and still feels fun and relevant today. Now, I said it was a downer of a movie. It goes to some depressing places for sure, but it also has a lot of humor in it. In fact, the movie starts off with a bit of a bang, so to speak. In fact, the funniest thing about this movie is that Jon Voight thinks he's gonna move to New York and become this like male prostitute just at the drop of a hat, and things do not work out for him very well. Not only because he's kind of a dullard, but he has no idea what he's doing, and then he gets hooked up with another hustler played by Dustin Hoffman. In fact, most people probably know this movie for this one line. I'm walking here! I'm walking here! But it is a true gem of a flick. In fact, I would say if you love Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, and it's either been a while or you've never seen this movie, I cannot recommend it enough. Now, for something a little more typical of a Darren Van Dam recommendation, we've got Repo Men, starring Forrest Whitaker and Jude Law, a wild sci-fi, cyberpunk action-adventure movie. This takes place in a future where a lot of people have artificial organs in their bodies, but these organs are extremely expensive. You've got to take out a loan, and if you can't pay your bills, the repo men come to take that expensive property back. Now, the rub in this movie is that Jude Law plays one of these repo men, and he ends up needing an artificial heart, and when he can't pay the bills, the chickens come home to roost. While there is a lot of action in this movie, I struggle to label it an action movie. You might be a little bit disappointed by the lack of action if you go into this expecting a bunch, but as far as cyberpunk movies with an interesting angle and an interesting story that ultimately goes somewhere, significant, Repo Man is great. Just be warned, it's an appropriately gory movie. Rescue Dawn is a little-known flick starring Christian Bale as a Vietnam POW. This too, kind of a downer of a movie. It's about POWs, but it's a good prisoner of war movie. It's not the best one I've ever seen, but it is a solid one if you're interested in it. And then they added the entire Riddick trilogy. I don't know that I've seen the full trilogy available in one place in quite a while, but for a refresher, that includes Pitch Black, just the best of the whole trilogy, just a fantastic sci-fi horror movie that holds up to multiple rewatches. After that, they tried The Chronicles of Riddick, which was like a PG-13, big, epic space opera thing that I think actually fell kind of flat. They reached for like way too much, did too much, and ended up, I think, with very little. And then they came back around years later with the third one titled Riddick, which kind of went back to the basics of Pitch Black. It's a different setup, but you're on one planet, it's a simple story, it's him against some mercenaries and some monsters. So if you were a fan of Pitch Black and you skipped the other ones, I highly recommend Riddick, and I say you could probably skip The Chronicles of Riddick. It's a very different movie from the other two. But then finally, on February 1st, they also added one of my favorite movies starring a Fast and the Furious alum, we've got Paul Walker in Running Scared. Now, this is a movie I will recommend anytime I see it available somewhere. It is my top pick off of this list. This is a fast-paced, electric movie that's got some fantastic movie references in it as well, especially one about John Wayne and the Cowboys. And it's kind of a gangster movie setup, except Paul Walker ends up spending the entire night trying to track down one gun that can implement him in a crime, while also trying to track down his neighbor's son. So while it's not quite a gangster movie lovers will thoroughly enjoy this movie. It does go to some dark places, but always with an interesting and creative twist. This is just a real gem of a movie with kind of an eye-popping cinematography and presentation, but also, like I said, just an electric, fast-paced story that ultimately delivers. Speaking of deliveries, though, if you are someone who maybe watches Flick Connection more than you watch the actual movies I recommend, why not get one of these shirts or one of these? I've got a bunch of designs available over at darrenvandam.com/shop. You can just scan this QR code and go check them out. And we did not skimp on the shirts. They are stupidly soft. They're great shirts. These are not like the bargain basement t-shirts, but they are a fitted design. So if you like your shirts a little looser or a bit big, definitely consider going a size up. But if you like them fitted, they fit well and they're super comfy. I wear mine around all the time. They're like my favorite shirts to wear. And it helps support the show while also giving you a way to show that you've got unique taste in movies like I do. Now, on the second, they already added Past Lives, a movie that came out in 2023 with incredible reviews. I have not seen it, but I'm holding this one for Valentine's Day. This is the one me and the wife will be watching. This is about two people who had a strong connection as children, but when the young girl's parents immigrate from Korea to America, they're separated at a fairly young age, yet the movie is about them reconnecting 20 years later. It's got incredibly high ratings. It's supposed to be a fantastic story, and also supposedly it features some pretty impeccable filmmaking, so it's on the top of my list, but it is mixed language. There's going to be some English, but you're also going to have to read some subtitles for this one. Here on the 4th, the day I'm launching this video, they just added the Super Mario Brothers movie. If you have not watched this with your kids, it is truly an amazing animated movie. Not only is it visually stunning, but it's a lot of fun to watch, especially for anyone who grew up playing Super Mario Brothers. Odds are most people interested have seen this by now, but if you somehow missed it, for a kids animated movie, this gets the Darren Van Dam seal of approval. Also on the 4th, they're releasing an R-rated coming-of-age story titled DD. This looks like it's actually mostly in English, but there is going to be some Mandarin in it. It's about a young Chinese boy who's about to enter high school. The movie actually takes place over his last summer of middle school, and it looks like a straight-up coming-of-age story. It doesn't look like anything dramatically new, but it does look excellent. To the point that it's one I will for sure be checking out the week it releases, and it could likely make it onto some of those hidden gem lists I always make here on the channel. On the 6th, Invincible comes back for season 3. This is a hit show. If you're a fan of The Boys and you haven't got into this one, obviously it's adult animation. This is got a mature rating, but in terms of adult animation, this one is competing with a lot of the DC stuff that's over on Max. And while it doesn't connect directly to The Boys, again, I think fans of The Boys will really dig this one. If you didn't know, Prime Video is also adding MMA fights. They're having one on Friday nights every month for the foreseeable future. The 7th is where they have the next fight. Now, this is not UFC, it's the ONE Championship, but if you're into MMA, these are free fights available once a month on Prime Video. Now, when I was talking about everything getting added on the 1st, I did not mention the Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore movie 50 First Dates. They did add that, but I was saving that because they're also adding a documentary on the 11th titled 50,000 First Dates. Now, this is a true story about a woman with a very similar neurological disorder where she cannot make new memories, and she wakes up each day and needs to be told what her life has been like up to that point. So this one's probably going to be a tearjerker of a documentary, but you know, leading up to Valentine's Day, 50 First Dates and this could make kind of an incredible double feature. But if that's not for you, you're not wanting anything romantic leading up to Valentine's Day, they're adding an interesting one on the 13th titled Broken Rage. Now, this up front looks like my type of thing. It's about a hitman who gets trapped between the law and the Yakuza. The setup just sounds like it's right up my alley, but there's a weird twist with this one. Apparently, it presents itself as kind of a gritty action crime movie for about half the movie, and then supposedly at the midway point, the tone changes and they recount everything that has happened already in kind of a comical manner. Now, based on the trailer, it does not quite look like it works to me. One of the problems is that comedies in another language, sometimes I have a hard time with. I mean, if there's not a lot of physical comedy, you're just reading the jokes and you miss out on like the inflection and the tone. But the setup here has me interested. It is definitely one I'll be checking out. It looks like it could be terrible, but it's also got me interested. A rare combination. On the 18th, George Lopez has a brand new comedy special coming to Prime. I haven't seen any of his new material in quite a while, so I have no idea what to expect, but the man is a comedy legend, so I will be checking it out. And then on the 20th, Reacher returns for season 3. Probably one of the most successful shows on Prime Video. They have more successful ones, but in terms of like stuff that's currently airing with new stuff, this one is one of the most popular things going for the platform right now. Longtime subscribers know I rarely have a chance to watch shows because I'm so busy watching movies, but apparently people love the Reacher series a lot more than they loved those Tom Cruise Reacher movies, which, you know, we're not bad. Not huge news, but the Meg is returning. This is one I think my son might be old enough to watch now. Not only is he into sharks like every kid his age, but he also loves the Jurassic Park movies, so this could be appropriate for him. It's a fun movie, even though I think they could have stepped on the gas and made it even more fun. They didn't, but as it stands, it's an okay movie about a giant shark. And then on the 27th, The House of David is a new series about David and Goliath. Now, they already have a season 2 planned. It doesn't look like a big, expensive show like the Lord of the Rings show they have, so it's very likely they'll do another season. Seems like the plan is to maybe tell the entire story of David, which is a pretty epic one, but season 1 appears to focus greatly on the story of David and Goliath, and it's only 8 episodes. Here's the full list again of everything we discussed, but keep in mind, the list is always down in the top pinned comment. I'm throwing it up here on screen at the end because depending on what device you're using right now, it can be hard to access that top pinned comment. If you like me doing this at the end of the videos, let me know by clicking the like button, even if it's something you never do. If I get significantly more likes on this video, I'll start putting the list on screen in future episodes. But for those that do check the comments, that top pinned comment always has the full list. Don't forget to go to darrenvandam.com/shop. Not only can you pick up a shirt, but you can sign up for my free email newsletter. I send out one email every Friday with 5 movie recommendations, and it often includes new releases that I don't talk about here on the channel. I will keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Prime Video episode, and you will see me on the next one.